Welcome back to Chapter 12 of Pirates of Savannah. As usual, feel free to donate or actually buy the commercial-free version at lupolilink.com. Enjoy.
Chapter 12. Road Agents in Flesh Palaces. The swamp heat and stench of warming algae woke the group up early. All the men, and even the collie, were covered with painful bug-bite welts from their trek into the marsh. The poor dog was a miserable mess of fleas, ticks, and tangles. The loud sound of locusts and frogs overtook the men's conversations. Until now, the seasoned Indian guide had somehow kept the group safe from gators, wolves, and other dangerous beasts. Now the men had to venture, unguided, to Darien and then Savannah. They knew they had to move fast if they were to make it by nightfall. Roads were extremely dangerous at night without a seasoned scout. They were easy prey to road agents and highwaymen that plagued the area. Patrick wondered how this one old man showed no fear at all while marching off deeper into the forbidding switchgrass with 16 mules and a dog. They were off, and on their way early when Archibald advised the group to change their musket to a smaller shot. The group loaded 4 smaller balls into the muskets instead of 1 large ball, normally used for battle and large game. He figured boar blast or a wild pig shot would give them a better defense against gator or such.
Crap, I'm so sick of these goddamn
The men kept a
books
fast pace,
keeping me
but the
alive.
sounds of Scottish cussing
Christ.
could be heard through the swamp. Apparently, a kilt did little to persuade the swamp bugs and sand gnats. Without a guide, the group seemed to almost step on a gator about every hour, but they followed the Indians' advice. They would slowly back away and make large circles around it. The massive reptiles showed no fear of the men and were mostly too busy sunbathing to notice. The amount of alligators and snakes slowed down their progress, and they were still not close to Darien. Camping this close to the road was asking to get murdered in the night. They only had one unfortunate option left. To get home as fast as possible, they would have to move very quickly up the dark road. Soon nightfall had completely set in, and the blackness took over. The moon was hidden, and the starlight was not sufficient enough to light their way. To travel in the pitch black was extremely foolish and more dangerous than bandits. One wet and slimy rock would turn a foot or a knee. A large foxhole or a large rut could find a man impaled on his own blade from a fall. But the men valiantly and foolishly stumbled up the darkness of the road. The marsh winds were picking up, and storm clouds covered the stars. Isaac heard a soft creaking sound and quietly stopped the group. He encouraged them to listen to the black. The creaking sound seemed to amplify with the wind, and it had a consistent rhythm. It was heard about every second. The men drew their flintlocks and lined up shoulder to shoulder. They reached out and touched each other's shoulders to stay in each other's very limited sight. They stood dead still for minutes, listening to the noise repeat over and over. William finally spoke up. "Fuck this, I still got one dry torch," he impatiently stated. Pierced the air as bright sparks lit up on the ground. The men's eyes went blind as the torch turned the blackness to light. Ah! A low-pitched scream was then heard, followed by a smashing and rattling sound. When Patrick's eyes adjusted, he saw Isaac standing next to half of a decaying skeleton. The other half was laying at Isaac's feet. Archibald broke into laughter. "You smashed him good. You look like one of those massive golems out of your Jewish stories." McIntosh held the torch aloft, revealing the 3 other decaying corpses from the tree, and stated, "No worries, lads. This is just a thieves' tree. It means we're close to Darien. Come on. It's not far now." Patrick and Isaac were still in shock, but the 2 Scottish men pressed forward with no signs of mental distress. Archibald comforted the 2 men, explaining,
Hanging trees are still common in Scotland even today. It is a message to the road agents to steer clear of this town. You should have seen how they used to do it in the moors when I was a child. My town still had human-shaped iron cages that were used for hundreds of years on bandits.
He continued as Patrick and Isaac's mouths hung open.
'Tis true. They would throw the poor bastard in alive and starve them for weeks. I can remember hours of screams from men slowly dying. They would scream in pain as their own bodies slowly ate themselves. We're much more civilized here. Now we just stretch their necks and be done with it.
Stop talking, you screech owls. Christ, a deaf man could hear you, McIntosh warned. The men walked very quickly and followed the torchlight. I hear something. I think this damn torch attracted some attention. Let's move, lads, McIntosh commanded. The four men broke into a fast, clumsy jog. The sounds of their packs clinging and clanging alerted the world of their pace. Not much further through these fields. I know where we are, the kilted man stated. They knew they were being pursued. The men could hear sounds of many footsteps behind, keeping pace. "Me farm's right there, lads. Run!" the Scottish man said in a panic. The men tore up the road to the house in a panic-filled sprint, but the footsteps were closing in on them.
Lads, fire your big shot directly behind us into the darkness,
Archibald pleaded.
Trust me, do it.
The men slowed their sprint as they blindly pointed their muskets behind them. The dark road lit up with musket fire, and a group of angry bandit faces could be seen in the flashes. Screams could be heard from the gang of thieves behind them. Throwing his torch at them, William ran towards his home.
Lads, bring the hellfire down on them. Come on, hurry
He
up.
shouted something in Scottish as loud as he could, over and over, as they sprinted towards the house. The wild musket shots brought the fleeing group a few seconds to make their final sprint to the house. The house door flew open and 3 women and a boy with muskets stepped onto the porch. The woman and the boy took fire into the darkness behind the fleeing group and immediately ran back into the house. The exhausted group burst into the house and fell over each other.
Shut the doors, shut the doors,
Christ,
shut the
look
doors,
out.
shut the doors.
They immediately got to their feet and barricaded the doors.
Bastards, get back out here.
Angry screams could be heard cursing outside in the night wind. Behind their barricade, the people reloaded and took positions at the windows as sentries. They sat and listened to the gang yell at each other while one of their men screamed in pain. The screams of agony grew louder and louder until a gunshot was heard and the screaming stopped.
No.
By the time second sleep approached, the bandits had finally abandoned their siege. "Thank you, family, for saving your father's hairy arse once again," McIntosh smiled. One of the young ladies said, "Gross, Bobbin, that's disgusting." The men in the room laughed, and the tension of the moment lifted. "This be me bride, Deborah, and our girls, Lindsay and Lauren," the large Scot introduced proudly. "That over there is me little ween, Roderick," he said, pointing to the boy.
Thank you for helping save us from those bandits,
Archibald said to the family. "Well, you saved me soul from the black, so we be level now," McIntosh reasoned. Exhausted men worked out shifts and rotating sleeping. The 4 men went out of the house slowly and fully armed. It did not take long before they discovered a naked body shot several times. The men cautiously dragged it into the swamp for the gators and wolves to enjoy. Isaac, Archibald, and Patrick stayed with the family for 3 more days until they declared it was safe. They were eager to get home and see their friends and family. "I want you 3 to wear these for protection against the dark. They will keep away marauders, ghosts, and the devil. Yous tempt Satan when yous travel in the dark," Deborah cautioned. She gifted the men 3 large Rowan wooden crosses that were about the size of their hands. The wood was fastened together with switchgrass. "She brought them over from Scotland. Very old tradition. Rowan wood is very powerful and magical wood," William added.
Thanks so much.
Archibald gratefully replied.
It is nice to have something from the moors. I sure miss those beautiful, foggy mornings.
The men said their heartfelt goodbyes, and then they were back on the trail to Savannah. Archibald joked.
Sorry, Isaac. I guess you could cut that cross up and make it into a Jewish star. Well, the sentiment was very nice, Isaac replied. I'll keep it. You can't have too many things to keep away evil.
They made their way to Savannah as fast as possible while the sun was up. They left very early in the morning and made it to Savannah without incident. It was dusk when they arrived at the edge of town, and the blacksmith said an affectionate goodbye to Isaac.
Tell that Dr. Nunes to come see me tomorrow, and we will settle up on pay for your services,
Archibald reminded Isaac. The indenture and his boss returned home to find it had already been prepared for the night. The Freemans had already done the nightly shut-in. For hundreds of years, their ancestors used this ancient procedure to protect them from the dangers of the night. The door was locked with a huge key which tumbled the slide locks. The family locked down the shutters and pulled the blinds. He also installed iron bars on the inside of the window that protected them from night thieves. Archibald was especially adamant about the shut-in procedure when he was not with them. After all, Savannah was made mostly of corrupt soldiers and criminals. Archibald knocked on the door and announced in a deep voice, "We are here for Marion. Send her out in her nightwear." Some giggling was heard inside the house, and the door flung open as the family rushed out. They embraced the patriarch and kissed his filthy, bearded face. After the family showed their father the proper attention, they smiled at Patrick. "So glad he did not get you killed, Patrick. But I see no swag on you two. I hope you found something of value after being gone that long," Heather stated. Archibald grabbed his daughter by the shoulder and escorted her into the house.
"We sure did. But best not to speak of it here, lass."
Archibald recounted the entire tale while his family listened intently. After many mugs of grog and much boasting, the men went to sleep. Almost 2 months had passed, and feelings in Savannah were tense. Privately, people around town referred to the invasion as Oglethorpe's New Folly. Nobody was brave enough to call it that openly, of course. The town was bracing for retaliation from the Spanish. Everyone knew something was coming, but nobody knew what or when. Ever since they returned to town, the blacksmiths had been very busy making shot and repairing weapons as the nervous town prepared for a retaliatory invasion. Every few nights, Archibald would disappear and not tell anyone where he was going. The Scottish town of Darien was left in shambles, with so many of their men killed in the Fort Mosay battle. Mr. McIntosh was in negotiations by messenger with Alick from Fort Mosay, trying to broker a deal for his clansmen's release. He was planning to use his portion of the profits made from future sales of the cannons to buy the prisoners' freedom. The time was soon approaching for the Indians' return, and Patrick still had no idea how Archibald was going to sell the cannons. Who would be daring enough to buy English cannons? It was a death sentence to anyone caught possessing them. One evening, Archibald closed up early and asked Patrick to join him. The two rushed through their dinners and headed out the door. The patriarch demanded his family to shut in and not to answer the door for anyone but him. The two men followed the torchlight to a familiar-looking door. Archibald knocked 4 times, then 5, and waited. A flash of red flickered in the torchlight as the door opened. "Welcome to the Red Lady. Enter, you weary men. You look as if you need a bath." The lady in the red dress motioned.
"We need to talk business, April,"
Archibald said in a serious tone. She whispered nervously, "Ah, a bath it is, then. Over here. We have 2 baths ready. It is still warm. We even offer 2 kinds of soap, gentlemen. All for just 2 shillings each." The 2 men nodded and went to the private bath area. She had built 2 rooms on her standard house and now had a building rivaling some of the wealthiest Savannians. The brothel was very well lit with whale oil lamps and was finely decorated. Patrick assumed this was the upscale whorehouse where the rich come to play. Patrick had never had a warm bath, and he quickly grew fond of it when he finally slipped in. Exotic women of all flavors were coming and going out of the area. They brought soaps and sponges. April introduced two of the exotic women, dressed in worldly clothes. "Gentlemen, this is Roxanne, the Persian princess. She's not very fluent in English, but she does speak French and Spanish. And this is our import from Paris, Tiffany. She does speak English, so ask her if you need anything." April clapped her hands, and both women pulled their breasts out of their complicated dresses. The dresses had been modified with flaps, so their womanly tools of seduction could be exposed easily. "Enjoy your baths, gentlemen. I'll be back soon to talk," April Sky said softly. Archibald was uncomfortable with the whole situation and dismissed Roxanne immediately. Patrick, on the other hand, was taking full advantage of the French girl. She scrubbed his back, chest, and hair. His erection kept poking its head through the soapy water. "Archibald, how the hell did I not know about this place? And why haven't we been going here every night?" Patrick asked earnestly. "Down lower. Much, much lower, mon ami," Patrick instructed with a devilish grin.
Well, my wife would run me through if she knew I came down here like this, for one. Also, I didn't think you had any money since I have not been paying you."
Archibald laughed. "Well, yes, that's true," Patrick conceded before he instructed Tiffany. "Lower, lower, lower down the front."
"Patrick,"
Archibald lowered his voice, grinning.
"You'll have to pay them more if you want them to scrub down there, and I'm not paying for that."
A naked black woman named Rose came in with a bucket of hot water and added it to the tub. She looked more Caribbean than African, but the excited indenture thought she was stunningly beautiful and did not care. Patrick had never seen a fully nude woman before and could barely breathe. He gawked openly, and she smiled back at him. The black beauty bent over in front of him and hung her flesh bags of temptation for Patrick to admire as she refilled his water. Archibald waved her off, and she left giggling as Patrick's jaw hung slack. When he regained his composure, Patrick stated, "I officially love this place. I know exactly what I'm spending my cut on the money for." Archibald grunted.
"And I figured you'd buy your contract off me and be a free man."
Patrick scratched his chin. That's a tough call. I don't think I can unsee what I've just seen. I think I'll just have to keep working for you and spend every shilling here from now on." Patrick's eyes widened as his smile stretched from ear to ear. April entered the steamy room and closed the door so they would be private. "Well, Archibald," she stated, "I did it. I found a buyer for your iron. 2 small ketches will be picking them up. I arranged a meeting place on the coast near where you told me. You have to get them to the coast. The buyers will do the rest."
"Can you trust them?"
Mr. Freeman asked.
"I trust them to try to steal them," she confessed. "They're pirates."
Archibald queried.
"So how can we do this deal?"
"First, I need you to file all the British markings off the cannon. This captain and I have history, and he wouldn't dare steal the war iron off me. Will you trust me in handling the gold for the sale?" She smiled.
"You can broker the deal, but I cannot trust you. After all, my dear, you're a pirate too," he returned.
"You stab a lady in the heart with such venomous words, Scotsman," April snapped back. "So what is our solution?"
"My indentured will accompany you to make sure this deal stays on the level,"
Archibald resolved. After a moment of thought, she found this compromise acceptable. "Very well. I'd be honored to have this handsome gentleman to escort me. In 2 days, meet me here and be ready to sail." April spit in her hand and held it out. Archibald spit in his hand and reached for hers. He had forgotten he was naked in the tub and stood up to seal the deal. He quickly covered his manhood with his left hand and sat back down. April grinned and sauntered over to Patrick and shook his hand. "We have a deal, then, and thanks for the show." Patrick busted into boisterous laughter as she left. The Scotsman's face grew bright red with a combination of embarrassment and rage.
"Rinse off, we're leaving,"
The red-faced men pouted. No, we are not leaving. You can go if you want, but I'm staying here till they throw me out. Archibald barked back.
Fine, but that won't be long after they find out you have no money in your pockets.
Archibald rinsed off the suds with a few buckets of fresh water and then dried himself with a linen cloth. He put back on his clothes and mumbled.
Great. Now I need to go throw some dirt on me so my wife doesn't know I've been here all night.
The disgruntled Scottishman grumbled and then stomped out of the bathroom. A few minutes after his boss left, April came back in and smiled at the content man. A fully naked Rose came back in too, and helped the scarred-faced man out of the warm tub. She started drying him off, being sure that she spent extra time drying his genitals, while April smiled. A busty blonde woman in a bright yellow dress bursted into the room, and April shot a look at her.
"What is this interruption, Whoremaster Tartan?"
April questioned in a stern tone.
"I'm sorry to disturb you, madam, but we have a problem. That Sergeant Luther roughed up Carla, and now he says since he's military he doesn't have to pay. He violently took my girl, and he's not willing to pay for the privilege."
Whoremaster Darden spit. April dropped out of her businesslike tone and sounded like a salty sailor.
"That arrogant fucker thinks he's going to steal from us, just because he's a cock-sucking lobsterback. He's going to pay extra for hurting Carla. I'm going to run him through."
April then hiked up her long dress and unstrapped a large knife hidden on her thigh. She stormed out of the room while a naked Rose and Patrick stared at each other, trying to figure out what's going on. A large crash and a ruckus could be heard outside the door. Muffled cursing could be made out, followed by a male scream.
"Ow, you bitch, you cut me!"
After a few minutes went by, April returned, brandishing a bloody knife and a bag of silver. Patrick ignored the knife and instead luxuriated a few more blissful minutes in Rose's nakedness. April cleaned her knife and informed him his time was now up, and she needed the room for another guest. Patrick savored every moment of the cardinal knowledge he was obtaining. He slowly dried off and got dressed. He was then escorted out of the washroom to the front door by the Frenchwoman Tiffany. He soaked up all of Tiffany he could, admiring her figure until the moment the door was shut. He stood heartbroken outside the door of the Palace of Magical Flesh. "Damn," he muttered. "I am so sick of being poor. We gotta sell those cannons quickly." Patrick took in the night air and followed the torchlight home. He saw the night watch making his rounds, yelling every few minutes about the time, the weather, and all clear. The watchman wanted people of Savannah to slumber, but not too hard. A constant state of vigilance was necessary, especially in the wake of General Oglethorpe's colossal failure of an invasion. "You there," the watchman barked. "Where you going and what's your business?" The Inquisition was a sobering reminder that Patrick was not free, not even to enjoy the night air walking home. Having to answer questions any time from a man in a uniform was embarrassing and humbling. Patrick tried to ignore him and keep walking as if he did not hear the watchman's call. "Hey, stop!" the watchman shouted. "Answer me!" Because of years of abuse at the hands of prison guards and British soldiers, Patrick had grown extremely resentful of authority. His mind scrambled with angry questions. What if I did not provide an answer and keep walking? What gives him the right to know my personal comings and goings? I'm not harming anybody. Why am I assumed I'm a criminal? The only reason I answer him is out of fear, not respect. I know if I ignore him, his pride will be challenged, and he will have to exert his authority. Archibald was right. The only power any government has is force. Any time I come into contact with the king and his men, it always ends only one way. They will use threats and violence until I surrender to their will. I have to answer him, or get the butt of the musket smashed into my skull. "I am on my way home," Patrick reluctantly announced. "I'll be going now." "Not so fast," the watchman commanded. "Who are you and where's your home? Step next to my torch and let me get a good look at your face." The blacksmith refused to move closer, but answered his question with a question. "What's your name? Tell me yours and I'll tell you mine, good sir." This angered the sentry as he closed the distance quickly. "That's not how this works," the redcoat angrily barked. You answer my questions. I don't answer yours, servant. Servant? I thought a man was free here in the New World. Patrick stood his ground. Where did you get that idea? You are the subject to the king. Never forget your place. He owned you, servant, which means I own you. Now, I'm not going to ask you again. What's your name, servant? The redcoat was now yelling. I'll tell you my name when you treat me with some respect and tell me... With a crack, Patrick fell to his knees, holding his bloodied nose. Tell me, slave, the redcoat continued, what's your name? What's yours? Patrick spit through a mouthful of blood. Treat me like an equal, and I'll tell you. Patrick felt a thump, saw a flash of white pain, and then his world turned black. Patrick quietly leaned over and asked his employer, "What did they say?" Archibald stoically replied,
Only 18 made it back here. The fort had 120 Scots, with only 30 Indians. Over half the clan died, and only a few have been captured. They are arguing and debating about whether to go back. We best keep our distance and let the families grieve, lad.
The salvaging party stayed in the shadows the rest of the night, as the kilted warriors grieved for their friends and relatives.
Most are going back to Darien. They feel they've spilled enough Scottish blood for king and country. I'm not going with them. I'm going to stay, see if there be a way to free the captives,
William announced the next morning.
You're welcome to stay with our clan here, brother, and join us,
Archibald said in a sympathetic tone. The bloody kilted man nodded in affirmation. Following Ligochi and Garland's careful pace, the group retraced their steps. They got as close as it was safe to the fort and waited for an opportunity. A large pile of dead were outside of Fort Mose. The Indian counted 68 dead. Most were Scottish. He also took note that there were only 10 dead African bodies and around 30 captured men. The party came across a British artillery division who were in a heated debate. The scavengers stayed their distance and listened intently. Patrick heard them arguing if they should abandon the artillery and escape. Oglethorpe's siege was not holding. The Spanish managed to sneak supply ships through the Royal Navy blockade, and any thought of starving St. Augustine into capitulation was lost. Oglethorpe now planned to storm the fortress by land while the naval ships attacked the Spanish and half-galleys in the harbor. Commodore Pierce, however, resolved to forego the British naval attack during hurricane season. The Commodore's decision angered the general because now he would have to embarrassingly withdraw his forces. His entire campaign would be for nothing if he called a retreat, and he'd be disgraced. Now the Spanish were on the attack and driving the British out. The artillery units were running for their lives and leaving the cannons behind. The British soldiers were arguing with each other about if they should leave the cannon mules behind when a spear struck a soldier in the back. A large group of black soldiers were screaming as they charged out of the woods, throwing their spears. The British returned fire with their muskets, but were caught off guard. They were quickly overwhelmed, and the few that were not already dead surrendered without a fight. The old Indian motioned for the men to leave, but by that time it was too late. Garland barked to alert the group, but when they turned around they found themselves at spear point. 12 spears were pointed on the men, who quickly surrendered. Patrick pissed his leg in fear, knowing that in seconds they would all be dead. One black warrior was arguing with the rest of the battle-raged group. The African advocate stepped between the spears and the prisoners and started yelling at his own troops. He waved a familiar-looking Scottish battle-axe at his own men, backing them off. The group of 5 battle rats waited nervously to learn their fate.
Archibald, no worry, you not die today.
A familiar voice said. The advocate turned around, and he was hardly recognizable in his full war gear.
Alec, is that you?
Archibald replied.
Yes, friend. Gloria and I make it to Fort Mose. We free now.
The escaped slave smiled.
I tell the warriors not to kill you. I tell them how you risk family's life to help us. I tell them you hate English. You lucky you not dressed like British. The warriors still want to kill your Indian and Highlander. Alec, please don't kill these men. They also hate the British and don't want to fight. They are like you Africans and are forced to fight for their freedom. They are used by the white man to do his bidding. They do not want to kill your men. Please help them. They're good men,
Archibald pleaded. A series of translations set in motion. The tribesmen all spoke their own language, and each conversation had to be translated many times. There was much heated debate, and the infighting between the warriors was lengthy. Finally, Alec explained,
You may return home in peace. No Africans be killing you, but we no speak for the Spanish. We keep these British cannon men as prisoners. You stay here. You not run off and warn other British we coming.
The 5 men nodded in agreement and sat on the ground unthreateningly, while they watched the black soldiers regroup and head out to kill more British. The Africans vanished into the marsh as quietly as ghosts. Patrick's feeling of terror was starting to flee. The pounding of his heart was returning to normal as he stopped shaking with fear. He stood up and could not figure out why the rest of the group was smiling ear to ear. Did I miss something? We were all just about to meet the devil by spear, Patrick questioned.
Yes, that was a bit close, lad. But you might be looking around now.
McIntosh laughed. Patrick saw 8 cannons completely alone and unguarded. There was a small army of mules, as well as artillery carts of gunpowder, cannonballs, and supplies.
Folks scrounging for muskets. Those cannons could make us rich for the rest of our lives. Archibald, we have to take them and conceal them now.
The large Scotsman stated with excitement. All eyes fell on Archibald.
Leochi, can you find a place to hide these?
The old Indian reflected as he searched his memory.
Yes. A cave I found hunting when I was a young warrior, 2 days into the marsh. We must leave now. All mules in one line. We must take them down the river to hide tracks.
The savvy men wasted no time seizing the opportunity. They clumsily formed a mule and cannon parade and marched the entire lot into the swamp. They slowly moved the line of cannons and carts for hours. The white-haired Indian kept retracing their path and trying to hide the deep wheel tracks. He did his best, and his efforts would fool a novice, but not an experienced tracker. The party slowed to a crawl as they maneuvered down streams and creeks to completely erase their tracks. They were even blessed with a hard rain to further melt their prints in the earth. Fear drove them into the night, and they did not stop to rest. They knew if the Spanish or Africans saw them, they would kill them on sight. If the British caught them, they'd be hung as thieves. It was a very dangerous game they played. After 2 exhausting days of travel, the group arrived at 2 groups of large burial mounds hidden deep in the swamp. The Indian man summoned his companions for help. In front of one of the mounds was a large pile of stones.
Whoa, whoa, Isaac exclaimed. This is not a cave, this is a tomb. I'm not digging up a tomb. We need to find somewhere else to hide these. No, those mounds are sacred. This mound fake tomb. No Indian ever open it, it's safe. Now move rock, big man,
the Indian explained. It took a long time to move all the rocks, but the crew was amazed at what was revealed. The mound had been an entrance to a large underground room. It still had barrels and some tools in it. The walls of the massive underground chamber were actually buttressed with timber, and the cave was very deep. It was higher ground in the swamp, so it was not flooded inside by the rains.
My tribe hide here from Spanish soldiers and slavers. Took many moons to build. Men forget this place for many years. Cannon safe here.
Ligo Chi said proudly. The men worked all morning and carefully used the mules to position the cannons in the carts. The massive chamber was crammed full. The men would argue to reposition the cannons and the carts over and over, trying to make them all fit. Finally, Isaac discovered a pattern that would allow everything to fit neatly. They used the oil in the canopies in the carts to protect the cannons. They were dried off and then covered with oil so as not to rust. Then everything was covered with canopies. The tomb was sealed back up with rocks to match the appearance of the others. The men were grinning proudly at their hard work. Archibald suggested to push on and camp away from the spot in case the men were being pursued. The men did their best to wipe clean the area of tracks to appear as no one ever stopped there. The exhausted group finally made camp and reveled in their good fortune.
Lads, it'll be perfect if we pull this off. The English will assume they were abandoned and the Spanish stole them. The Spanish will assume the English recovered them and not go looking for them. It is truly devious of us, Archibald bragged. I know someone interested in buying these cannons. But we will have to come back out and move them out to the coast. Great warrior, will you help us? I want profit of 4 cannons,
the Indian replied.
I'll give you the profit of 3 cannons and all the mules.
Archibald negotiated. The old man accepted this with a smile and held out his arm. Archibald locked wrist in the Creek custom.
I will take the mules with me and hide them. 2 months at full moon, come back to move cannons,
the Indian instructed.
Tomorrow take different paths. Draw a map for you to return home safe.
The men agreed in short time and all were asleep, even Garland.